Hello YouTube and welcome to my channel, Bolt Forward. So some of my subscribers are telling me that they are not receiving notifications about my recent uploads. Looks like YouTube is doing that thing where they go in and quietly change notification settings. If you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing and clicking the notification bell. Today's video was created out of necessity. There is a distinct lack of videos out there showing a detailed disassembly of Mauser HSCs, and mine was quite crusty and dirty inside the trigger mechanism, which helped cause some of these malfunctions. In fact, every Mauser pistol I have ever owned has required in-depth cleaning down to the tiniest of parts. This is my first disassembly video, and I hope you find this informative and helpful. These are the tools I recommend for the disassembly process. A small container for the tiny pins and springs, a small hammer or rubber mallet, a flathead screwdriver, preferably one designed for gunsmithing, small punches, preferably brass or plastic. If you have to use steel punches, exercise extreme caution and be very ginger with them. A magazine, which is an absolute must for getting the slide closed and testing the trigger. And lastly, some sort of very sturdy and narrow post, such as this micro flathead. To start the disassembly process, lock the slide to the rear and verify that the weapon is clear. Ensure that the hammer is down and cocked. Rotate the safety lever down into the safe position. Remove the magazine. Locate the takedown button inside of the trigger guard and pull downward while simultaneously pushing the slide forward. The slide will move forward a few millimeters and lift up from the frame. Separate the slide from the frame. This portion of the video will cover the disassembly of the slide. First, remove the barrel. I recommend using a plastic punch for this. Insert the punch against the barrel and push the barrel away from the breech. If the barrel does not pop out, a downward motion will pull the barrel out of alignment. From there, slightly pushing the barrel forward while pulling down will free the barrel from the slide. The spring is omnidirectional and can be put back on the barrel in either direction. Next up is the rather complicated and spring-filled fun of removing the safety. My plastic punches are broken, so I will be using my steel ones. Remember my warning about being careful. Make sure the safety is lifted up into the fire position. Locate the rear of the firing pin. With your support hand, place your finger in position to manipulate the safety. This is definitely a two-handed operation. Using your punch, press the firing pin in until you are able to rotate the safety towards you into the safe position. If done correctly, you should not be able to see the rear of the firing pin protruding, as well as the sizable gap in the firing pin channel. Using a small punch or micro screwdriver, pull the firing pin downward until the rear of the firing pin clears the end of the channel, then lift upward. The firing pin will be stuck in the upward position. Rotate the safety lever halfway and make sure that the detent pin is not engaged. Doing so will make removing the safety a lot easier. Prepare for trial and error on getting this thing out. My safety lever was wedged in pretty tight, so I used my micro screwdriver to press the safety out. Make sure to keep that safety halfway or else you'll be fighting the detent pin. Wiggle and pull the safety until it is free of the detent, then rotate the lever towards you to fully remove the piece. Press on the firing pin to reinsert it back into the firing pin channel. Some will say to pull on the spring with a flat blade screwdriver and then lift up to free the firing pin. This method works, however I find there is a much simpler way. Cover the firing pin channel with your thumb and depress on the back of the firing pin. Once the spring is safely secured in your hand, put it in a small container. Make sure to have your thumb over that firing pin channel or else the spring might go flying away. To remove the extractor, make sure that the detent is exposed and out of its channel. Then, by pushing on the claw end of the extractor, it should rotate freely and come out. Now, take out your frustrations by banging the end of the slide on a flat surface to shake the detent out of its channel. You may have to press the end of the detent back into the slide to get it started. The detent is omnidirectional and can be reinserted either way. Make sure you have all 4 of these components safely secured. Set the slide away for now. This portion of the video will cover the disassembly of the frame. Reinsert the magazine, and while holding the hammer, gently lower it by pulling the trigger. Remove the magazine. Using your flathead screwdriver, gently loosen the grip screws. These grip panels are not reinforced, so do not over-tighten the screws when reinstalling the grips. These internal parts are secure, but I would not recommend banging the gun around with the grip panels off. Make sure that the hammer is down. Using your punch pin, remove this small pin at the bottom of the frame. It will be stiff due to being under spring tension. Remove the magazine catch and hammer spring by pushing the button of the magazine release upwards and towards the front of the gun. Some trial and error may be required. Replace your busted gloves and tell your patient to bend over and gently relax. Remove the disconnector. Pull down on the trigger bar so that the disconnector can slide down and out. This piece is inserted and held in place by a small set of rails. Next up is the trigger bar, which is under spring tension. However, removing the trigger bar will not launch any springs across the room, so don't be worried. Do not attempt to remove the trigger bar from the trigger connection point. Instead, wiggle and pull it towards you until it clears the frame. Then it should be able to rotate upwards and away from the gun before popping free. To remove the hammer, press out the hammer pin. Though this component is not under spring tension, it may be a bit stiff to remove. You should not have to use a hammer to remove it. Once the pin is free, the hammer can be removed by wiggling it out of the frame. Be warned, there is a small pin that is held in mostly by friction and can drop free. This pin engages with the hammer spring bar. It is recommended to place the pin in a small container if it falls out. Removal of the magazine safety and sear are done by removing a single pin. Be careful, there are two springs here, one of which is incredibly small. Using your small punch, press the pin out. Once the pin is out, the sear, cartridge feed bar, and sear spring can be removed. These components are no longer held together. Remember this orientation of the cartridge feed bar for reinstallation. Remember to be mindful of this small spring as you remove the magazine safety. On this model, the magazine safety is held in by friction. Your model may vary. If your safety spring comes out, I highly recommend you place it in a small container. Almost done, guys. Removal of the trigger starts with relieving the spring tension off of the trigger retaining pin. Carefully push the end of the trigger spring around the trigger. From there, push out the trigger retaining pin. The spring will lift out, followed by the trigger. Remember this orientation for when you reinstall the trigger spring. Lastly, remove the takedown plunger. Using your thumb, or in my case a plastic punch, to press the plunger all the way down and rotate clockwise. You may have to finagle this one out. Once the plunger is rotated 180 degrees, the plunger and spring will come out together. And there you have it, a fully disassembled Mauser HSc. This has been a complete disassembly guide of the Mauser HSc. YouTube has some pretty odd rules regarding the assembly of firearms, so I'm not quite sure if I'm going to make a reassembly video. If this is something that would benefit you, let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, see you next time.